Hey folks. So last night I was having a pretty emotionally charged conversation with someone. And, I started to talk about antinatalism and started to really go in depth with it with this person. And I was asked the question, why do you care so much? Why do you care if other people have children? Why do you care? And that one question for me fermented my already existing idea that natalist breeders, whatever you want to call them, they don't care. They don't care. They care in as much as it's happening to them or to someone that they personally like or know. That's as far as their care extends. But they don't really draw back to see the entire picture of suffering and what that's like and the reality of it. And the reason that I do care so much is because I recognize that I do have my life to live. And I understand that I suffer with my own sufferings. But I'm not so conceited that that's the only thing that I can focus on, that I can see. I can draw back and look at it and understand that if this amount of suffering is taking place in my life, how many more children are going to be brought into this world to experience that very same type of suffering or even greater extent of suffering than what I did? It's not just about me. And that's the thing that they don't understand with antinatalists. If it were just about us, that would be one thing. But it's not just about us. We're talking about the continuation of dragging people into harm's way, purposefully, intentfully, and not giving a goddamn fuck about it, which is what they are doing, which is what we are opposing. If you've seen someone drag a child off the street and take them into an abandoned shack where you know that they're about to be tortured and then killed, you would try, if you were decent, to stop that person from harming that child. We're doing the exact same thing. It's about the prevention of further suffering. If it happened to us, it can happen to someone else's child and likely will. And on the wheel goes. Someone has to stand up and stop it. Someone has to take a stand to say enough of this perpetuation of pointless pain, sorrow, and suffering. Somebody has to stand up and say, it's not about just me. I want to save someone else from ever having to deal with this, from ever having to live a life where all of these harms and sufferings are guarantees, where death is a guarantee. Have you ever watched a human being waste away? I have. That left a permanent mark on my psychology. Watching a human being waste away in pain, in anguish, crying, praying, and screaming, and knowing that that happened over and over and over again for as long as human beings have been on this planet. And knowing that that will continue to happen for as long as people continue to bear children. At what point do you just say enough? The whole ugly fucking thing needs to stop. Somebody has to stand up and say something. And while I understand that I might not change the whole world by myself, I am thankful that at least I can help someone to understand the real harms that are present in this world. And through that interaction with that person, hopefully influence them to make the right decision to spare their child from ever having to be another statistic in this mad game of carnage, because that's all that it is. Humans are doing nothing but replication for the sake of replication. It's the same mentality of a virus. There is no point to putting children into the meat grinder and expecting them to just deal with it. And that's another thing that you often hear from these people. When their children bring up how they are discontented with their life, that they don't want to work, they don't want to deal with problems. And then the first thing that their parents will say to them or other people is, well, you know, that's just life, deal with it. The callousness, the callous disregard of suffering. And that's what's going to keep this whole shit show going. And that's what I am standing up to stop. That's what other anti-natalists are standing up against, to stop. Somebody has to. Just like the story of those who walked away from Omelas, a great novel. And the premise of the story was there is this city, this euphoric city, where everything happened right. Everything was good for the people who lived in that city. But their happiness came at one cost, that a child every year will be taken and brutally tortured to death for the happiness of the entire city. And the ones who walked away from Omelas are the people who saw what was going on with that system and said, that's too much of a high price. And they decided to abandon the city because it's too high to make a child suffer for the sake of others. And symbolically, the child represents the suffering humanity that everyone else's happiness is built upon. The overlooked people who are in the back of the room screaming and crying and in anguish and tears, while the rest of the world just shuffles away dancing and doing frivolous things and enjoying their frivolous pleasures that amount to nothing in the end. And the ones who are empathetic enough to see that no system should be built on the suffering of others, those are the ones who walked away. The ones who walked away were the ones who were not willing to impose their children or the fate of any other child to suffering and death for any cost. And that's what's missing with these breeders and their mentality. They do not care. They don't care. And even when you press them hard enough to admit it, they will blatantly tell you they don't care. So somebody has to. I'm not doing this just because I want to save my child. I want to save as many other children as I possibly can, because I see what life is capable of. I see how it ends. I've seen the tears. I've seen the struggles. I've seen what it's like to watch children fight over food because they don't know if they're ever going to have anything else to eat. I've seen these things with my own eyes, and I care. And the fact that you fuckers don't care is the problem. So I've seen these things for myself in my environment and in the world at large. And while all the blissful Pollyanna fucks go around just pretending that it doesn't exist, it's there. And somebody has to stand up to it to stop it. So if we annoy you, good. But we want you to think about what you are actually doing to your children. Every time you have a baby, every time you bring a child into this world, you are creating a fate. And you don't know how it ends. You're going to gamble with that person's life and say, oh, well, if they don't like it, they'll just have to get over it. Fuck you. You inconsiderate, selfish piece of shit. Fuck you people. You're fucking evil. I despise you, all of you, because you don't take into consideration the harm you are causing, the deaths you are causing. It's infuriating to think about. How many millions of more people are going to have to be born, suffer, and fucking die for nothing because of your grandiose belief of, oh, I want my genetic line to continue. Oh, I want grandchildren. Why? To satisfy your own selfish wants and egotistical needs. But it's never for the children's sake. You are willing to lay eggs on a pile of shit and think it's okay, and it's not. And then you get mad at other people who have enough empathy and enough compassion to say you should not subject children to suffering and torture. And I hope there comes a day when the majority of you somehow understand it. I hope so. But I really don't know. Because humanity is not an empathetic species. It is not a decent species. It doesn't have that kind of consideration. Otherwise, this shit would have stopped eons ago. But it's all the perpetuation of pointlessness. And trying to get people to understand that we're not doing anything special. You're all doing the fucking same things, and you're all going to put your children on the same planet to do the same fucking things that you did. You're all upholding a status quo at the risk of your children paying a price to experience suffering and greater sufferings than what you did. You don't know how the future is going to be. But I can tell you statistically it's going to get worse. And anybody who is honest and is looking at the world as it develops, they can tell you this shit is going downhill fast. Whole economies around this world are crashing and burning. It's going to continue. Inflation is on the rise. Climate change is going to knock the fuck out of a whole lot of people in the near future. We're going to see some crazy events. And this is the world that you want to subject your children to for a fantasy of fulfilling your own desire at the expense of torturing your child. So don't give me the bullshit of, oh, I want to have a child so I can show them love. You don't love them enough. That's the problem. So until you recognize that this world and this life, the torture and the death that comes along with it is not worthy of having your child to go through, then you will never be able to convince me that you actually love your child, because you don't.